Hey guys, welcome back, and I think I'm gonna start a new series where I'm just gonna go through some of my own personal collection of blades and do reviews. A lot of these knives, when I test them, I carry them for a couple years, you know. I have them on me, and this was a particular blade that I bought 6 or 7 years ago, and I was, you know, as anybody is when they're young, they become a hardcore fan of ColdSteel. You know, they got those videos, they got these claims, they got these bold claims. We got the strongest, the sharpest. Definitely. One thing that is for sure is that ColdSteel offers the highest quality that you can imagine for that price that they offer those gadgets for. Like, I'm never really disappointed with the ColdSteel because it's often so light and weight. Not with smaller knives, but with big knives like this, the bigger something is, the bigger a blade is, the more weight you gotta knock off of it. You know, that's why like, for example, integral knives are not always so great because it's just so much added metal. It doesn't need to be there. But we're not talking about kitchen knives. So I could easily say this is actually one of my favorite folders, but it's not because I've used it for making fires or used it for cutting brush, or really haven't used it much for anything other than carrying it on me, knowing that I got the biggest fucking knife in the room. Sorry my language. I'm not gonna swear from now on. It's just, you know, it's again so light, but when you take this out of your pants, if you're at a party and everybody's, you know, pretty drunk and whatever, and the guys are pulling out their little pocket knives trying to show off, oh, I have my brass knuckle on you, you're always gonna win if you're pulling one of these out of your pants. You know, this is like the BBC of folding knives, man. So it's good. I like it, and I think it doesn't need to be like the ultra highest quality blade steel, you know. I've sharpened this many times. It is kind of sharp, but I haven't used it, so I've sharpened it like I sharpened it like 7 or 8 times, but have only really used it a couple times to do some actual cutting. I did do some chopping on some bushes, and I didn't like it. I think it's just kind of light for that. So there really is only one purpose for this knife, and that's to do whatever tasks you would do with a blade shape and blade length like this. So it's basically like a bucco without the Scandi grind. You get that reach. It's a fighting knife. There's no doubt about it. This is a self-defense folding knife. This is what you carry on you everywhere you go, whether it's to the bathroom, to the, you know, wherever you go. And it'll protect you because it'll be the biggest freaking knife in the room 99% of the time. If somebody else is a bigger knife than you, then you're probably friends. So it'll be the two of you, the two knife nuts that are carrying huge ColdSteel folding knives everywhere you go. There really isn't much I can say about this, other than, yeah, it's an excellent knife, but I never really ended up using it much. But there is one specific thing that is actually really good for, and this is where I bring it with me. I stopped carrying it now for a couple years, but I do bring it with me on moose hunts, and there's actually a really good reason for that. You know, one being that it's stainless steel. But this thing fits right up the butthole of a moose. It's a very good blade for cutting off the intestine from the butthole. I don't know any medical terms for this, and I don't even know if moose have different terms than humans do. So, but yeah, people who've done a lot of skinning and have skinned and gutted and shot large animals will understand that really well. And I think if you're buying this for around $200, $300 is a bit much, I would say, for this blade. I think if you're gonna pay $300 for a folding knife, you might want to be a bit more strict. Not with the strength. I mean, this is probably going to be a stronger blade than most things you're going to find. A stronger like construction, but it's just, I think this, you know, for $300, you know, you can get a similar thing with like Damascus blade, or you can get, you know, maybe it'll be heavier, but there's a lot of, at $300, that's when the options start to really come flooding in for ultra high quality stuff. And when it's production based, you got to be a bit more, I don't know. But for a $200, if you can get one of these for under $300, let's say, and you're hunting large game, huge game, you know, rhinos, or I don't even know if, I mean like hippos or whatever, you know, some huge African animals, or moose, these things that weigh like hundreds of kilos, then this is actually an excellent tool to have with you, because it really makes that part of the gutting after you've knocked down the animal just that much easier. But that's not to say you can't do it with a tiny little knife either, you know. When I was hacking bushes with it, it did feel like it would wobble. It's quite a strong build. You just tighten it if you have to. It feels pretty darn good, but again, like they've taken away a lot of the ergonomics so that you can have the slimmest profile and the lightest weight, which is, I think, the primary factor here, and which is what makes this blade so easy to carry. Now, I don't really want to carry this around with me anymore, because I like it so much that I just sort of keep it aside. I have so many other knives that I carry on me, for example, for EDC, you know, like, you know, one of my own little knives, something like this, or, you know, something like this, or, and then especially nowadays, I mostly, if it comes to EDC, I carry picals. So for an EDC blade that's inside the urban environment, inside the city and all that, for me the pical shape is ideal. Everything else just seems to kind of fall short. And this is not a pical, so, you know. And the funny thing is, I've noticed that this is like an ideal size for what it is too. Like this hits a niche in the knife world that's you really can't find from anybody else, which is, you know, in and of itself a good reason why I think this knife is good value. Everybody needs a different knife. Everybody's got their own kind of way of doing things when it comes to knives, and you know, this might or might not suit you. But I would say, you know, if you are a larger guy and you got deep pockets, empty deep pockets, it's so easy to just have this with you and forget about it forever, you know, like whether you open it or not. And the intimidation factor in terms of defense is so huge. Like if you pull something like this out, it really is, you know, you're talking like you're talking about as much reach as one of these SOGs. This is another knife I'll be reviewing. So, you know, this will give you a more intense punch and a hack. It's a bit heavier and it's got a wider grip, but that's not the point here. If you see the length of these two, it's pretty similar. They have very similar reach. So, you know, with this folding knife being like a fraction of the weight, you know, and with the same reach as essentially a small bowie knife, it's not bad. It's pretty good. And you know, if anything, sure, you know, it might not hold the edge the best. I mean, at least I don't think it does. Maybe I've sharpened it with too much of a rounded edge or too steep edge, so that's why it might feel like it's not getting super sharp for me. Maybe I got a lemon, I don't know, but I still like it and I still use it and used it. And another cool thing with this knife is you can actually, if you think about it, kind of use it as like a kitchen knife in the forest, because it is stainless. It is very light. You know, so just I think just to summarize everything, when you're talking about most applications where you would need large knives, you know, if you're talking about camping, hunting, they really need to be as light as possible, with as little extra things. You know, not having a sheath is kind of nice. You know, being able to put this in your pants and forget about it without it obstructing your legs, or without it getting in your way, without it like being cumbersome. I think that alone, like you're getting a lot for your money when when you just take those factors into consideration, which is ultra lightweight, ultra long reach, folding knife with very, very strong mechanism. You know, when you put all these factors together, it's like, yeah, actually this is a pretty good value for money. But then but I think you know, stab wise, it's very, very effective. Maybe in jabs and hacks, it's better for you know, blocking and parrying. Maybe that's where this shines. Actually, is not so much with it's actually for parrying and blocking, and then, you know, stabbing or whatever, rather than doing any hacks or jabs with your fighting. But the cutting performance, I would say, is where this thing kind of droops. It doesn't really, you know, if you have like a, I don't know, maybe this is not a good example. If you're carving wood, you know, like, or just cutting stuff in general, it doesn't shine that well, you know. I think if you get one of these, go to Jeff Serrations and get him to add some nice serrations there somewhere, and that'll really shine this blade up. But yeah, like, there's a lot of things where the edge is really just not my favorite. It's not my style of edge. I don't particularly, it hasn't performed super well for me. The edge profile, the edge geometry, the sharpness, sharpening, it hasn't really been my style. It could be yours, but that's the, you know, that's where it's basically that's where I've basically left it for me, where I'm like, okay, I don't really need to carry this with me anymore. And it's also, it has sort of a collector's value now, especially in Finland, since there's like, I don't think there's almost any of these in Finland. I might be the only person in Finland that has one of these, because there's specific importation rules and laws. So, but yeah, it's a gorgeous knife. It's ultra lightweight. It's extremely strong. It's very high quality. It's stainless steel. You wouldn't believe how light this is for its size. I mean, we're talking like, what does it say? 200 grams. Yeah, 200 grams. I mean, it's basically the weight of a light kitchen knife, you know? So it's very impressive. And, you know, if it comes down to long cycling trips, hiking trips and all that, you know, a big old blade like this one, as nice as it is, you know, they're pretty heavy, you know? So this might be better for you. But again, like, it's not like it has a tip that's great for skinning. It's not that great of a skinning knife, although it's really good for working on carcasses, especially what I said earlier, disconnecting the butthole from the digestive system. But that's you know, that's the best use that I've come up for this, other than like portability and cutting moose buttholes. That's the only, really, the two main factors that have really worked out for me. So, you know, carrying it everywhere and cutting buttholes. But So, to me, I would say if you're planning on spending this roughly the same amount of money on a ColdSteel folding knife, you may be, you're quite a utility kind of guy. You want to use it for opening stuff. You want to use it for cutting ropes. You want to use it for skinning. You want to use it for just like your everyday EDC stuff. You might be better off with another design. But that's not to say that this is a poor design. This definitely belongs in everybody's collector box, and but I would say that maybe the smallest of these might be a pretty darn good option. Since this one is so good, I bet the smallest one is really excellent. I mean, I don't really have much to hype about this blade other than it's extremely gorgeous, it's beautiful, and it stands for quite a lot. It really is a substantial, a really good knife. Although, if I were to redesign this blade, what I would do is do like a Scandi grind. I would keep as much metal as possible on the blade, and then I would do a grind like this along the edge. Right, this is what I would do, because it is a little bit too light. And I understand it's kind of a crazy thing to say, but I think when it comes to, if I wanted to increase the amount of usability this blade has, I would want to have slightly more metal on the blade, because it just doesn't go very deep when you hack, and it kind of feels like it's gonna break apart when you do. And I think that's not because of the construction. I'm sure it can handle it. I think it's just because it's such a light, thin blade. So I would love to see the ColdSteel HOLDOUT with a Scandi grind like this, and maybe even a tip like that, because again, most people, they're not out there carrying knives purely for self-defense, and this is purely a martial arts knife. If you're a knife fighter, professional martial artist, this knife is like a 10 out of 10. It's just it's the best. But for me, I don't primarily carry knives for that, because in my country it's illegal. You're not allowed to defend yourself in this country. You're supposed to just crawl up like a little bitch and take it, and then call the police and whine like a just whine. That's what you do in Finland. You have to be a little bitch. So, despite the fact we spend 13% of the annual budget on a military defensive system, you can imagine what type of soldiers we have when you're not allowed to defend yourself. But if you're a martial artist and you got big balls and cojones, this blade is perfect for you in terms of self-defense. I don't think you can go wrong with this at all, and I would say it's definitely worth the money. You might prefer the stiletto, but yeah, when it comes to my style, which is mostly utilitarian, I like to be able to chop a few branches. I'd like to be able to process wood into fire making material. Folding knives are not very good for making fires. They kind of score kind of low, for chopping and stuff like that. But so this goes in your jean pockets. It doesn't go in your camo pants, I guess is what I'm saying. This is what you take with you in your, if you're wearing city clothes. This is not really like a forest blade. That's really the easiest way to put it. So it's worth its money if you leave it in the category which I think it's designed for. But then as soon as you take it out into the countryside and you're doing some hefty stuff, it's a little bit underwhelming, because it really is so light in that sense. So you can't really use it for chopping large branches unless you really put a mean edge on there. But there's a couple moments when you're chopping even relatively light, thin branches, where it's like, is this actually gonna break? Like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Because folding knives are folding knives. I mean, there's, Americans especially, it's really weird, because they love full tang blades, and they love no tang blades, but they're not a big fan of rat tail knives because it might be weak. Rat tails are weak, but they're not. Rat tails are not weak. This doesn't have a tail. This doesn't have a tang. This is just, you know, the folding knives are just not really the best thing you're gonna have like laying around for batoning and for carving wood, making fires. Folding knives really are city items. Now, you know, I'm not being an idiot here. I fully understand that, you know, there's plenty of really high quality folding knives out there that are great for ranch work and forest work and stuff like that. I mean, here we have one of my favorite knives, which is just a Layol folding knife. These are all handmade, and this is a shepherd's knife. I mean, this is more than you need on a ranch for everything I do with the sheep and you know, a little butter on toast and cutting some rope. This is probably the highest quality, the best folding knife I've ever found for that. And this is, you know, handmade in the previous century, and it's from France, and it's just, you know, you can get these for like $30, but it's if you know, if you bought this brand new from a knife maker, it would cost you like $400, and it's higher quality, I think, than a lot of $200, $300, and $400 knives, but these are only like 30. So, you know, if I had to pick between the two of these for the farm work and what I do every day, I would actually just pick this one, because this one, it's just not the same. But if I was a martial arts expert and I was intending on self-defense and knives was my thing, it's pretty hard to beat this blade, just because it's like just for all of its qualities. So I guess you could say that this is a blade intended for flesh. So I don't know what I would score this, because, you know, it is 5 out of 5, but then I also don't really have too much use for it, right? Other than being the guy with the biggest knife in the room, which is a you know, powerful factor. I think Americans would understand that more than, you know, Finns or Brits or Germans, you know, that it, you know, these manly things. But it is gorgeous. And is it worth the money? I don't know. I paid a lot of money to get this into Finland, and I just told myself because I've been eyeballing it for so long, I just told myself, I'm not gonna look. I'm just gonna buy it, bring it in. I'm just not gonna look at my bank account when this goes through. But I think it was almost like $400 to get into Finland. So, and then it was only a few years later, I think they started importing them. I don't know. I haven't looked. And now they're like, I don't know, 200 plus. So I wouldn't buy this for 300. I don't think this is a $300 blade. I would say 250 max, around that region. And if you can get it for $200, then I think it's a great bargain. But I don't know if it will really have resale value. I don't know if you're gonna, you know, if you've been eyeballing one, you've wanted one for a really long time, and you can get one for $200, and they might even be cheaper nowadays. And I think it's, in terms of value, then it's pretty good. But for $300, I would buy something else, honestly. Although I'm really glad that I have this, and I'm really glad that I bought it, even though I paid like over $400 to get it to me. So I treasure it. It's a very mixed feelings knife, because it's like everything about it you love, but then as soon as you start to use it on a ranch, there's like, well, it doesn't really work that well for that kind of stuff. So, but that's it. That's the HOLDOUT ColdSteel blade, one of the most gorgeous consumer folding knives, one of the highest quality consumer folding knives, one of the most iconic consumer folding knives, right there for you. And I hope you liked the review, because these reviews will definitely change and become more professional over time. I really want to try on this nut and fancy thing where I have this philosophy of use and all that, because he's a great guy, and he's done so much for YouTube, and I just love his style. And you know, you're here to watch. you know, a lot of you guys, especially American consumers, you're very good with voting with your money, and you make sure before you buy something silly that is this actually something I want, and you go to watch a bunch of videos. And so, you know, it doesn't matter how many holdouts, ColdSteel knife review videos there are online, because like, yeah, just I can just add to it and people will appreciate it. So, and at some point I'm going to try and find a way where we can finance a system where I can get more knives in that I can test for you guys, because I've been making knives. I've forged thousands and thousands of knives. I have researched blade designs from all over the world. I have a collection of antiques. I've been researching this stuff for over 2 decades. I'm 30 years old, but I have about 20 years, around 20 plus years of experience with this, where I've been dedicating every day of my life to this kind of stuff. So the next knife I'll review will probably be this. Layola. But yeah, we'll get around to doing all that, and I sure would love a few suggestions on how to improve my videos, because this is the first real tabletop review, and you guys rock on and don't let anybody take you down, yeah?